Hello, everyone. My name is Marissa Harrington. I am currently the Artistic Director of Face Off Theater Company and a longtime board member of several arts organizations here in the wonderful Kalamazoo, Michigan. And I have the extreme pleasure of being able to sit and chat with the founders of the Kalamazoo Poetry Festival today. And I'd like for them to introduce themselves to you before we get started.
Yeah. Well, I'm Marsha Meyer, retired librarian after 40 years at Portage District Library and Parchment Library. I've been on many arts boards as well, and now I'm volunteering at another library and bringing in poets to the library. And I'm also in several poetry groups.
I'm George Martin. I'm retired, and my claim to fame here is I'm a poetry spouse. My wife is a poet, and my daughter is a poet.
Jennings. I work for the Kalamazoo Poetry Festival, and I was obviously here at the beginning when we got going, and I do a lot of their marketing, work with them in programming, and as many different things as they need me to do.
Well, thank you all so much for taking the time today to share your vision and your passion with us, because I know that it's going to be very helpful for a lot of folks that are looking to do the same kind of work in the community. First, what prompted the creation of the festival?
Well, from my perspective, as a poetry spouse, I had been to many readings, and what was clear to me was that we had a lot of talent in this community. Yeah. And there were groups in different corners here and there, doing some really important things, but it seemed like that others ought to know about it. So the idea of doing a poetry festival was in part a way to give recognition and support to those many poets we had.
Awesome. And Kathy, you said you've been here since the beginning, right?
Yeah. I think George is underplaying his role a little bit. He actually got all of us together. Mm-hmm. And he had this knack of letting us think that we were the first one that he talked to. And so he inspired us to all come together. We met at coffee shop, and discussed how to get this going. And yeah, so that was a...
You were the first person I talked to.
Rich, he's the first legitimately. Was there something lacking in the poetry scene that was identified and one of the reasons why the organization was started?
I think one of the things, I did a lot of programming with poets at the library, that I think, as George mentioned, there were a lot of really talented poets in the Kalamazoo area and Michigan alone, but there was a following, but it was usually poets, mm-hmm. And we wanted to have an opportunity for people who normally wouldn't come to a poetry reading to come, and also there were all these different groups, these little pockets of groups. And they were doing wonderful things, Read and Write Kalamazoo, mm-hmm. the Black Arts and Cultural Center, mm-hmm. all of these different organizations. And I hadn't been to any of them. I didn't hear about them. So we wanted to collect them all and have more of a community poetry read, mm-hmm. so that we could appreciate all of them, and also that people who might be interested in poetry would know where to go.
That's awesome. I've sat on the board of both of those organizations, and having collaboration be a central part of what you do and what your mission, I think, is very beneficial, especially for nonprofits in Kalamazoo that are smaller, right? Mm-hmm. We were talking about this earlier, just in terms of the resources that Kalamazoo has for local artists. What other organizations or groups of folks did you all reach out to collaborate with in the beginning?
I think one of the most important ones was FIRE. Mm-hmm. I was asked to be on the board, and in that way was kind of a link between them and the Poetry Festival. Mm-hmm. I think having the constituency of FIRE united with the older white women poets in this community was an important step that I believe we've taken.
Absolutely. What about the colleges? We're a huge college town. Have the colleges been a part of, or were they a part of the initial?
They were in the beginning, yeah. we had actually had an advisory group that helped us get going, and that brought in people from the colleges and different organizations all over town.
Talk about the relationship with the library and in the early stages, or both. How many libraries did you all collab with?
3.
3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, there's the Portage District Library, which Marsha
Right.
was working at the time.
Right.
We had a representative from the Kalamazoo Public Library on our board, and we had Kalamazoo College librarian was an integral part of our board.
How did that strengthen the momentum of beginning this?
Librarians know how to get things done.
Yes. So is it more like strategically helping, or did they just have connections in the community that they just help you with?
All of the above, yeah. For example, the Kalamazoo College librarian, Stacy Nowicki, ended up being our board president.
Okay.
And she is a multifaceted woman.
Awesome.
She's an attorney, she's a librarian, she
Wow.
just knows everything about boards. And so, yeah, having her in that position at that point really kept us going.
How many people were on that original board?
8.
8? Okay.
It originally was not a board.
Okay.
It originally was a steering committee.
Uh-huh.
And we only formed the board after the first festival, which only took us about 2 years to organize, right?
Was that the intent for it to be something that was a yearly event? Okay.
Yep. We wanted a process in place, kind of set a template so that we'd have a festival one year, and then the following year we would come up with we called it the Celebration of Community Poets. And so that was where our primary focus was on the poets from Kalamazoo.
Awesome. What is the role of the board now, today, now that we've grown?
It's pretty much, we moved out of that process phase into, it's a working board. We get the festival done every year.
Gotcha.
Yep.
That makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of smaller organizations, the board is a working board, because you have a small staff or like no staff at all.
Yep.
Right? So I have a lot of respect for board members for sure, because you get the work done, right?
Yeah.
Do you think the festival has accomplished the goals and visions it was created for?
It seems to me that it has. The festival has brought together a lot of people. The festival has been a way to support poets, even financially, here and in other places across the land. I think that we have done one other big thing, and that was to present poetry as a community endeavor. It's not just something that goes on in libraries or in colleges and universities, but it's a community activity. And the fact that we were a committee of community people, I think was a real strength. And I believe that the organization has followed through on that, would you say?
It really has, yeah. And built on that. So yeah, I feel good about the things that we set out to do in the beginning have been realized.
Awesome.
And we wanted it to morph. We wanted it to bring in new ideas, and they definitely have done that, which is, I'm very proud of that.
Has it grown in terms of the number of artists that you have involved, organizations that you collaborate with, community members that attend?
Absolutely. Yeah, and the first festival, I think we had something like 14 readers or something like that.
Yeah.
A handful, and now that's grown all along. During COVID, we had a few bumps, but
we all did.
But overall, it's gone up. Yeah.
Awesome.
There's one a few years back we had 20 readers. Oh,
wow.
kind of thing, yeah. And the beauty of it is it's all ages. Youth to grandmas. To everybody in between.
Is it open to the community as a whole? Like how do you all get the readers for the festival?
We invite them, and we also invite people if they want to let us know, and then we look at their work, kind of thing, to see if it's going to fit. Yeah.
Awesome. Talk a bit about, we just spoke a little bit about the diversity of the poets. Talk a bit about inclusion as an important aspect of the festival, and how did you all intentionally at the very beginning try to make that happen?
We contacted many organizations because we wanted to make sure that they knew who we were, and we wanted to know who they were. It was great for me because I think for all of us, because I didn't know that much about the Hispanic Council. I didn't know that much about the Black Arts and Cultural Center or the gay lesbian
Out front.
out front now.
it's out front today,
out
yeah.
front now. Yes, and even Read and Write Kalamazoo, and we used KVCC's Media Center for one of the programs. I didn't know that much about that. So we pulled in even groups that weren't just writing, and just said, okay, this is what we've got. This is what we're doing. Give us some ideas. So we got some really new, different ideas from people on what we could do that would be show the power of poetry, the power of language and words. And I think that really helped us. But we went to them, and I think that really helped, and including the deaf community, because our first poet, Ilya Kaminsky, who was from Odessa, actually Ukraine, and he came, and he was had very little hearing from the age of 4. So we wanted an interpreter. So that meant, oh, maybe we should have an interpreter. And so we had a deaf poet that came in. So I think that it just kind of grew.
I think we started with an understanding that inclusion doesn't just happen, that you really have to work at it and continue to work at it. And if you look at the people who've come in as visiting poets, that will tell you a lot about the heart of the effort. If you look at the people who've been on the board, at least recently, we have people of color on the board. And I think that it's been organized so that there's a sense of ownership. But again, that's something you have to keep doing. You don't just do it once.
And it has ebbed and flowed too. There's been times when there was less diversity, and we reached out to say, how can we improve our diversity? And the advice we got back was broaden your net. Like, okay, but it worked. You know, you find people who know people. You know that, and it worked. Yeah.
So how does poetry fit into your own lives? And I will start with you.
Thank you. I'm in a couple poetry groups. I write to figure stuff out. I write to find out what I don't know and what I've overlooked, to spark and to spread my perspective, and to have a group of people that I feel safe with. Because there's a whole lot of stuff inside of me that I don't want to get out, but I need to. And poetry is a great way to do that for me. And I love hanging out with poets. I love poets and artists that are open-minded, that can say, wow, I love this, but you know what? I wonder about this. So I just, you can learn so much about them because it's, many of them are being vulnerable, just like you.
Well, I love some poets very, very much, close up. Poetry is being written right next door to where I sleep and sit all the time at my house. My wife has written poetry since she was at K College, which, by the way, has been a real source of leadership and inspiration for a lot of people who are writing poetry today, with Di Seuss and before her, Conrad Hilberry. And Con was one of Gail's teachers. So poetry has been there for me to know about, and it's rubbed off on Caitlin, our youngest daughter. She's a published poet as well as her mom. And yeah, I like to be around most of the poets.
You sound like my husband. Yes, I'm not an artist, but you know, I like to hang out with most of the artists. I love it. But you're also an advocate, right? Just even being a part of this process, you're an advocate for the art.
I think so.
Yeah, for
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so would Rich Pattison, who should be here today and couldn't come. He's been a big advocate as well. We consider ourselves poetry spouses on the sideline and helping out and doing some things to advocate for it.
Everyone has their role, and they're all important.
And you need them.
And
Oh
you
my
need
gosh, do you
everybody.
need those advocates?
You need the support, right? And what about you, Kathy?
Well, As a working member of the Kalamazoo Poetry Festival, I have a constant way of it being in my life that way. But I'm fortunate that every once in a while in this community, I'm asked to be part of a show. I've done a lot of shows where it's called ekphrastic poetry, where you take a picture and then you write the poem about the picture. And I've been doing a lot of those and hanging around creatives. Marsha's husband has put on a couple of these. He does these drawings and then invites poets to write the poems about them. And I've done several of those, so that's been very
Awesome.
cool. Yeah.
Is your husband an artist?
Yeah.
Oh my. Can you speak more about that?
Yeah, he draws automatically. He draws and then he sees what he sees in it. But he's taught at Western, and yeah, so I'm very lucky.
Yeah.
I'm very
Artist
lucky.
family. I
Poor
love
but
that.
lucky.
Listen, listen, okay? Here, though, very, very rich. Yeah.
Exactly.
Very,
exactly.
very rich. Are there any favorite festival memories for the three of you? Anything that stands out to you over the years?
I have to tell you, the first festival, and we didn't know what was going to happen, but two things happened. One is we had this young student who was deaf, and he signed his piece, and the interpreter read it. He virtually danced the signing. And afterwards, people just went, ah. I mean, he took down the house. And the second thing is, D.C. Lavender, who a wonderful slam poet and an advocate, didn't show up. So we thought, well, something must have happened. So, and she was supposed to be one of the first. At the very end, she comes swooping in with boots on and with a hat on, and she started doing her poetry, and everyone was just.
It was the cap of the evening.
It was like we planned it. It was like we
love it.
planned it. And she came up and she just did this, and everyone leaped to their feet, and it was just the finale.
It was fun.
I love it.
It was perfect.
Yep.
And
was
now
just
she's the
perfect.
executive director of Read and Write Kalamazoo.
She is.
Oh, she
and
is.
doing the same type of work now.
Good.
With-
All those lucky students.
Oh
kids.
my gosh,
Yeah.
it's so
Good.
phenomenal to watch her passion for words and youth finding their voice.
Oh yeah. So
Be
important.
included in an organization like Read and Write Kalamazoo. So, oh my God, goosebumps.
Yes.
What's your favorite moment, George?
I think it was also that first night, the first festival in the library when we had, I think it was 15 people read. And then someone came up afterward and said, I don't know how you did this, how you pulled together this diverse group of people. And this lady did most of the picking up and pulling
Wow.
together. And that just sort of said, we did it. It was affirmation.
Total sense of we were able to do this. It's satisfaction of having done that. That was one of the things. I was thinking too that as my role in some of the marketing, I was able to see the pictures of people that came in afterwards, and some of the joy on their faces as they were participating or when they were listening, that kind of thing. It was just, it just is very, very satisfying to see. Yeah, this is what we're bringing to the community.
And this is why.
Yep,
right?
this is why, yep.
It's so affirming,
Yep.
right?
When
When you have a vision.
One of those groups was a group of fifth graders from Woodward Elementary. Yep, and they are on stage. I think there was 3 or 4 of them at the podium, and they're all up there with their little smiles, and it's like, oh yeah, this is why we do this, yeah.
That actually leads me to ask, this is not one of my prepared questions, but what kind of relationship have you all had with Kalamazoo Public Schools over the years?
We had at Kalamazoo Academy, what's the name of that? Washington.
Oh, Washington.
Washington Academy.
Washington Writing
We
Academy.
we grabbed. We worked with the teachers, and they were wonderful, and the librarian. And we had 3rd and 5th graders, and they were reading Maya Angelou poems, and and then they were given also the I Have a Dream speech. They were given those. They were to black out anything that didn't really touch them, but any words that did, and phrases they kept, and they made poems out of them. And then Marion Boyer, who was working with me on programming, who was a communication instructor at KVCC, worked with them on presentation. Right. How do you present a poem? How do you do this? And then we videotaped them. Oh. So, and Washington Square was great. And the teacher came, I think it was Mrs. Wilson, I even remember. But the kids were just great. And they were all there too. So, but to have them there and to have that pride of what they could do. And so they did. We worked individually with.
I love that.
Yeah.
We worked with Jennifer Clark with community and schools.
Oh, awesome.
And she's helped us with some of the connections with elementary schools, and has done presentations in a few different festivals. Yeah.
Awesome.
And that particular one that Marsha was just talking about was at the Kalamazoo Book Art Center. So it was a collaboration with them as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So it's like encouraging and training up the next generation, right?
That's the hope.
Which leads me to natural segue. Where do you all see the Poetry Festival the next 10 years? Like if you could wave a magic wand and just kind of vision cast for a sec.
I think there's still some work to give Kalamazoo its due attention. You know, if you think about places where art has really grown and flowered, like New England at some points in time, and the writers around Chapel Hill, for instance. This community has people who've really made it big. And I think that's just becoming apparent to people with the awards Dysous has gotten recently, for example. It seems to me there's a point in time when Kalamazoo could be another one of those centers in people's minds where art really does grow. And the backing of the Gilmore Foundation, the Kalamazoo Foundation, is a key part of that, I think. And because it seemed to me that we realized we could make this thing go when the Gilmore Foundation committed money. So we had a budget to operate with. We had enough money to invite people, two outstanding poets from other places to come. And they've stayed with us as a base of support since then. And hopefully that will continue and maybe grow, and we'll be able to reach out even more.
Yeah.
What do you think, Kathy?
If we can continue to grow our funding base, it would be very exciting to see ongoing programs throughout the whole year, instead of just have a total focus on the festival. And there's examples of that around the country. Lit Cleveland is a big program. Of course, it's a big city, but they have ongoing programs that culminates in a festival kind of thing. That would be that's the thing that I think of when I think of what could we be. You know, that's the.
Oh, that sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
Even you just saying all year round.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
oh.
Yep.
What about you, Marsha?
I think they need a paid executive director. Because
Amen.
I know how much work it is, and these people who are running it are just working very, very hard on it, and they have other jobs and they have to live. Yeah. So there needs to be somebody so that organization can stay there, and there's so much to it. Well, you know with all your boards.
I was just about to say.
Yes.
That having someone that is committed to the work, like Kathy said, all year round, that is their day in, day out job, definitely could help get to the next level.
Yep.
You know. Can you speak to the importance of, we kind of already talked about this, but I want to delve maybe a little bit deeper into Kalamazoo, Michigan, right? We are, a smaller city in, a pretty sizable state. We are not Detroit, we are not Chicago, we are not Grand Rapids, but have a very thriving arts community. So can you speak to how the festival adds to the arts community here? And then part two of my question is, Georgie spoke a little bit about possibly in 10 years, Kalamazoo being on the map in regards to the poetry scene, right? So can you speak to that a little bit? Like, what is little old Kalamazoo? How can we add to the poetry scene here? What's our potential?
I think one of the things that maybe we haven't talked about enough is that people sometimes are afraid to go to the university to hear a poetry reading, or to K College, or don't know where to park, or don't know how do I act, or what is this? Is it Tennyson and these old dead white guys, but which aren't all bad, but they didn't excite me.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Let's just be real.
Just saying. But when we have something that's bigger and that includes their children, their grandchildren, their best friend, and it's in like the KIA or it's in someplace else downtown, then it's, oh, this is what it is. Yeah. It introduces people to that. So then when they hear it again and it's in a library, they think, oh, this might be really fun. So I think it really gets people excited about the arts. Yeah. Also, the new board has brought in music, has brought in hip hop, has brought in all kinds of other things. I think theater's next. And I think, hint, hint. But I think that will introduce people to all kinds of different art forms and let them know how they merge, how exciting that is, and how they can be part of it.
The mission for the next 5 years is to put Kalamazoo on the map so that we get the credit, not just because it's good to be on the map, but because we have something to offer to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And I suspect that, as Kathy and Marsha just said also, probably is going to have to be paid talent to help put that together. Yeah. So there needs to be a stake in making sure there's somebody who can organize around that part of a mission.
One of the things at the recent festival, we had Patricia Smith and Dinez Smith, and it's like a higher caliber poet than we've had in some previous festivals. And I think that'll be part of getting the name out there. We were thrilled. Patricia Smith came to our open mic, and it was Zoom, so she could be there. Yeah. And it was just so exciting. And the open mic participants were excited that she was there, and that kind of a thing can't hurt.
We talked about you all in the very beginning getting Gilmore Foundation funds to help kickstart the organization. Yeah. But also wanted to allow some space and opportunity for individual donors and other organizations donating. Can you speak to a little bit what that was like at the beginning? Gilmore Foundation obviously believed in the Poetry Festival, but talk about like going to individuals and saying, hey, can you give? What was that like?
I think a lot of it had to do with people knew these guys. People knew them. They knew their spouses. They knew, and they were in groups together. And so you start there, and then you get the talk out. And Kathy knows more. She's a pro at this. But I think also letters out, family members.
Okay.
We also had each of the organizations that we represented were donating in the beginning, and that was helped us. That was helped give us a very good financial base to spring from. The foundations really did support us as much as anything. So,
sure.
Yeah.
In the beginning.
In the beginning. Well, to this day.
Still.
Yeah.
That's why they're there, right?
And that's where we're blessed to live in Kalamazoo.
Yes,
because that funding is available. Yeah.
Awesome. What do people need to know about the Kalamazoo Poetry Festival that we have not touched on yet? I know we've talked about a lot, but
if you love poetry and this community, check out the board. I learned so much, and I made such dear friends. It's a great experience. So think about being on the board.
Marsha said it really well. There's something here that's really important for the community. So you'd be a part of that. But it's also a point at which some people who want to write can get support to do it. So I think that's a big part of what we can offer.
April 13, 14, 15, 2023 is the next festival. Yes. We are getting our poets in line, and both our guest poets and the people who are going to be part of the community read, and workshops. We're looking for workshop leaders at this point too. So it's going to be great, and we're excited, and we hope you'll all be part of it. And like Marsha said, come and join the board. We can all use all the help we can get. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn more about the Kalamazoo Poetry Festival. There are several ways that you can be involved. One of them is to obviously donate to this wonderful organization to keep this great work going so that we can have year-round programming eventually. Also to serve on the board. If you are passionate about poetry, you are passionate about the community and the arts, consider joining the board and helping to keep this wonderful work going, and also maybe volunteer, perform. There are a lot of ways that you can get involved, so make sure that you reach out to the Kalamazoo Poetry Festival and get involved.